missed out on any part of my rambling, visit VSiN.com/podcasts. Shows are put up there. It's absolutely fantastic. And rumor has it that tomorrow at 5 a.m. Pacific time, there's going to be a really good NBA spot on Follow the Money. I'm just going to throw it out there. So maybe, if you miss out on that tomorrow, VSiN.com/podcast. I'm just going to throw it out there. Anyway, let's get into Major League Baseball. So I'm excited. Look, 60 games is not the perfect sample size for Major League Baseball. It's going to lend itself to insane randomness. On top of which, they did not expand the postseason, which I think ups the randomness factor because you're going to get teams off to slow starts. You've heard it 1,000 times, but the reminder that the Washington Nationals were 13 games under 500 through 50 games last year and ended up winning the World Series. So with the playoffs not being expanded, with a DH now in the National League, with only 60 games, this is setting up to be, to me, one of the most entertaining baseball seasons that we've seen in a really long time. So we went through all of our buy low, sell high pitchers already. So let's now start to look at these divisions. Okay, and we'll start with the AL West. One, it's a division I'm comfortable with. If you've listened to The Edge or VSiN throughout the years, you'll know that I am an Anaheim Angels guy. So it's a division that I'm somewhat familiar with. So we'll start here. Astros, top of it, $1.40 favorite. Right behind them to win the division. These numbers I'm reading off to you, courtesy of the Westgate. Athletics 2-1, Angels 7-1, Rangers 20-1, Mariners are 200-1. So where do we begin with the AL West? Well, other than, of course, we talked about with the schedule, let's talk about potential division winners, okay? So the Astros to win the division, $1.40 favorite. That carries an implied probability of 58.3%. And so I tackled this originally with the thought of just looking at it numerically, right? And so you say, okay, $1.40 favorite, 58.3% in terms of implied probability. Oakland, if you tie in these win totals, and this is what I find kind of interesting, right? Let's tie in the win totals. Houston's win total, 35, okay? Oakland Athletics win total is 33.5, just 1.5 behind Houston, and yet they're odds to win the division 2-1 or an implied probability of just 33.3%. And then you get to the Anaheim Angels, whose win total is 31.5. Again, what is that? 3.5 right behind the Houston Astros. They're sitting at 7-1 to win the AL West. That is, in terms of implied probability, just looking at the numbers, a 12.5% chance. So to me, I grade out the Anaheim Angels as having a better opportunity or a better chance to win than just 12.5% that division. So I think if we're talking about value alone at 7-1, I would take the Angels to win the AL West. Other shops, it actually varies. There's plus 550 over in Jersey. There's 5-1 in a couple of global books as well. So 7-1 a little bit longer on the Angels, and it's something that's, I think, worth it at that price. Now, you can't ignore, as you analyze the Anaheim Angels, their massive weakness in the pitching staff. Fangraphs projects 7 of their potential rotation members with fielding independence over 4.5. Just one pitcher is projected to have a fielding independent under 4. That's Shohei Ohtani at 378. And again, these are all projections. Houston's obviously stacked with the top of the rotation, right? Greinke's projected to have a fielding independent of 4.24, which is actually still pretty solid. Verlander and Lance McCullers Jr. is actually projected to go under that mark. McCullers at 385, Verlander at 349. Remember McCullers, who, by the way, one of my favorite pitchers, at least to watch, a fantastic breaking ball pitcher who has been rock solid in his career, coming off of that Tommy John injury, now getting extended time to get ready to go for a regular season. But those two are projected under 4. And then the question, I think, because I've heard a lot of, hey, I really like Oakland. And obviously there's nothing wrong. Everybody has their opinions and the numbers that they crunch. To me, there's 2 massive issues with a team like the Oakland Athletics. So we'll tie in the staff at first. First up, we remember our buy low, sell high pitchers, right? Well, 2 of their pitchers actually made the list for our buy low, sell high. They were both sell high guys. First off, Mike Fiers, who's one of our sell high pitchers with the largest sample size. Fangraphs projects him to have a 525 fielding independent. We know that the numbers that we had earlier in this show, right, was it like 3 weeks ago, a lot of it projects to him being a lot worse than he was last year, that he was playing with fire and maybe getting a little lucky. And then you look at a guy like Sean Manaea, who's coming off of a major shoulder injury, and yes, he pitched 29 2/3 innings last year, but a lot of those numbers, and again, it's a short sample size, but were insanely unsustainable. A strand rate of 100%, a hard hit rate of 47%, and a batting average on balls in play of 194. So he is obviously going to regress. We don't know to what point. The other part is, and there's there's numbers that we can dig through and find in terms of guys getting suspended for PEDs and what they do statistically in the years following. But Frankie Montas did get popped, right? And now he's on the radar. And what does that mean for a guy like Frankie Montas? And he got suspended. So we can surmise that he was having a fantastic year, gets suspended for PEDs, and comes back. But what happens now, right? To me, there is a chance that Frankie Montas kind of falls off with his pitching. So those are all my questions from the pitching staff for the Oakland Athletics. Tying in the fact that like their lineup is great, right? From a power perspective, their lineup looks fantastic. From Olsen to Davis to Chapman, there's a lot to like about their lineup. Here's the issue with me for the Oakland Athletics, on top of having the questions personally about the pitching staff. If you look at their lineup, let's just take power out of the equation, right? Because over a 60-game season, all three of those guys that I mentioned projected to hit 14 or more home runs, which on the surface doesn't sound like that much. Over 60 games, it's very good for those three. But if you look at some lineup projections for the Oakland Athletics, get this. Not a single member of this team is projected to hit over 270. And I don't think you want that over a small sample size, right? If you have a lineup that is just reliant on power and you don't have a lot of guys who are going to get hit for contact and get on base, to me, that is not a profile that I want to back. So I have a pitching staff that I personally have questions about that I think are statistically backed. And then I have a projection for a lineup that is, yes, power heavy, but is not great in terms of their average. So I really don't want a part of the Oakland Athletics sitting there at 2-1, which again leads me back to the Anaheim Angels. We know about the Angels lineup, right? It's actually suddenly really intriguing. Let's take Mike Trout out of the equation because we know how good he is. You have Justin Upton, who the last time he was healthy hit 257, 30 dingers in 2018. You bring in Anthony Rendon, who hit 319 and 34 last season. Andrelton Simmons, one of the best defensive players in Major League Baseball, has quietly added to his offensive game. In the last season when he was fully healthy, again 2018, hit 292 over 600 plate appearances and has gotten better every single year offensively. And then hell, Brian Goodwin, who's projected to play out in right field, he's going to be the back end of this lineup. He hit 262, 17 home runs, 65 runs batted in over a season of 136 games and 450 plate appearances. And that doesn't even factor in the Anaheim Angels have a kid coming up in Joe Adell, who they're very excited about, who could plug into that right field spot, who's got an electric bat and is a really good defender. So there's a lot to like about the Angels. The thing that's going to hold them back is that pitching staff, right? Shohei Ohtani being a sixth man or a sixth starter, right? How effective is he going to be now that he's going two ways? And I mean that too, by the way, as a pitcher and a hitter. Because as a hitter, he has really grown from the first at-bat to where he was last season. Does his hitting fall off now that he has pitching back on his plate? Humans and I used to talk about this on The Edge all the time. I think he should just be a full-time hitter. Screw putting him in the rotation. His bat is absolutely fantastic, and he has shown an ability to grow as a hitter, or to grow as a hitter. And then you look at Houston, it's like there's a reason they're the favorite. And I'm not saying they don't deserve to be a favorite, but if you're looking for the keyword of value, which people like to say a lot, to me it's not laying $1.40 with an Astros team in a division that has kind of caught up with them on the back end. It's taking 7-1 with an Angels team that could arguably have the best lineup in this division outside of the Houston Astros. Look,